Hello and welcome back to a brand new up-to-date episode of Motherhood is Wild podcast. I'm your host, Jaylena, and I'm really excited to dive into today's episode with you. I hope that you enjoy it. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel and give this video a like if you would like to see more. So, it's been a while since I last posted a video. I think I was like in my third trimester last time you guys saw me on this podcast. And well, I think it's safe to say that I was ready for that pregnancy to be over. I very quickly after that became pretty overwhelmed and not feeling my best. I was basically borderline preeclampsia or I basically was borderline preeclampsia. And my blood pressure was just not as high as it needed to be to have preeclampsia, but it was close enough that they were treating it as such. And I just I remember being so uncomfortable and I was so swollen. I just I remember having to walk to the bathroom and I could barely do it. I would wake up and I'd have to pee like a million times. If you know me personally, you know I have the world's smallest bladder and I pee very often. It's not an issue. It's just how my body works. And I remember waking up and I I was so like frustrated. I think I was already like feeling I struggled with postpartum depression, and I feel like a little bit of a part of me was already starting to feel depressed. And I didn't want to wake my partner up to help me to the bathroom just because I didn't want to be a burden. And I know that that sounds crazy, but that's just where my head was at. And I remember waking up and trying to just do the simplest task of just walking to the bathroom. And I would have these really intense pains in the heels of my feet. Every time my heel touched the ground, it was like every nerve ending was exposed and it touched the ground and it'd shoot rockets of pain up my nerves in my heels. So I'd try and walk on my tiptoes and I was heavy. And so it was hard. And I would just cry. I'd be bawling my eyes out, holding on to whatever I could physically grab next to me to help escort me to the restroom. Like, that's how miserable I was. And I was just ready to get it over with. So I just want to kind of share some updates with you guys. I don't think I've ever told, or I guess I've never shared on YouTube, I guess, before. So that's what we're here today to do, to kind of give you a little overview of everything that's happened since then. So I'm struggling, right? I go to the doctor. I at one point had to have some tests done after that because I was just experiencing like dizzy spells and I was seeing spots. I was having all of the symptoms that you have for preeclampsia. So that's why they were treating it as such, because I had all these tests, but everything came back normal. But I was feeling like this. I remember being so miserable and not knowing what to do and being worried something was wrong with me. And so I had multiple tests done at the hospital, and eventually my doctor and I agreed that it would be better to induce me instead of waiting until I went into labor, because it was bad. So I think I went in, I don't remember. It wasn't June 2nd, which is when Ember was born. It was before that. I don't remember if it was July, the end of July, or on the 1st. Either way, I went in and they started the process of induction. And is that what you call it? Induction? They began to induce me. And they decided to go with the balloon method. And it was not comfortable. I mean, I imagine it's not going to be comfortable in any situation, in any way that they try and do it. But they did the balloon method. So they fill a balloon up with water and they put it in there, and it's to try and break your water naturally. We did that for hours and hours and hours. I did like the exercises with the nurses to try and get my water to break. And eventually, one of the doctors, I think I had four, had to come in and manually break my water. That was you lose every thought of a boundary when you go into, like, when you are having a baby. So that was an experience. And both the male and female doctors made me feel comfortable. So that was a plus. But once my water broke, I was, they were hoping that my contractions would start and I would go into labor. And if you want to watch the birth vlog, I did a birth vlog for my channel, Leave Her Wild. If you'd like to watch that, I will link it somewhere or in the description. And that's more of like what actually happened during the time, but I don't think I necessarily shared all the details. So I started to dilate, but it was very, 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 very slowly, and it was very painful. And I didn't know what was an appropriate time to wait before you could have an epidural. I should have asked, but I didn't. And when I opted into the epidural finally, they were like, "You did so good. You were so strong." I've never seen, most people don't wait that long to get an epidural. And in my mind, I'm just like, "Are you serious?" I was losing it in my mind. I was in so much pain. And then the epidural kicked in and it was less painful, but it was still painful. And I was still dilating, but it just wasn't happening as quickly as the doctors would have liked. So I dilated to a 7 after many hours. And then I stopped and I wasn't dilating anymore. Ember's heart rate Ember, my daughter, her heart rate started to climb. So her heart rate was getting up and up and up. And eventually the doctors came in and were like, "You're not dilating. We don't feel like it's a good idea to wait any longer. We're going to have to do an emergency C-section." And so I said, "Okay." And I didn't know which way it was going to be. I honestly didn't think that I was going to have a C-section, but that's just the way that it happened. And I went in, they cut me open, and the most beautiful baby girl I've ever seen screamed. And looking back, I was so drugged up and so depressed. I don't think that I got to appreciate it as much as I would have liked to. And my arms are strapped down. So Isaac, her dad, got to hold her first, and I didn't get to hold her at all. So he had to bring her next to me, and they just like kind of laid her on top of me, but I didn't get to actually hold her. At least that's the way I remember it. I feel like I should go watch my vlog because I'm like, did I hold her? That's how much I don't feel like I got to experience it. I don't even remember. And I want to be real and raw and transparent with you on every single one of these episodes. So I'm not going to act like I'm not going to lie to you. I honestly, the way I remember is I didn't get to hold her. But if I go back and watch that video and if my arms are not like strapped down, I'm going to be real surprised. But after that, I went they left Ember with me. They took me from the operation table to the gurney or to the hospital bed, and Ember was with me. They rolled me back to the room, and then that's where they took her to do newborn baby things. And I just remember my whole entire body was shaking uncontrollably and my teeth were chattering uncontrollably, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. It was crazy. And I know that that is a common reaction to the anesthesia, and it was just really bad. And I think my mom told me the same thing happened to her. And then it was all kind of like a blur after that. I didn't sleep. It's been a year and a half and I still haven't slept. But at the hospital, I didn't sleep very good. I remember there was one night, Ember just kept crying and crying. I tried to breastfeed. And long story short, that deserves a whole entire episode on its own. But long story short, I was having difficulties. And one of the nurses that I was having at the time, she just wasn't listening to me. She wasn't hearing me, and she was forcing me to breastfeed, even though I said that they could give my daughter milk if I wasn't able to provide her any, and I wasn't, but this one nurse was like forcing me to try and breastfeed, but nothing was coming out. Like my milk had kind of come in, but like I wasn't even pumping anything. Ember was not getting anything out of me. And so there was one night, it had been like a day or two, and she just kept crying and crying and crying, and I was crying, and I didn't know what to do. And finally a different nurse came in and offered to take her and feed her, and I said okay. And then when she came back, she basically told me that Ember was just starving because she wasn't getting any milk. And like I said, I'll go into it in further detail, but that story is a little wild. It makes me angry to think about it now. I'm just so different than I was back then, that me now would have said something. Me then didn't want to be the burden, so I didn't speak up, and I should have. But I digress. Anyways, so Ember was finally fed, and I got a teeny tiny bit of sleep while they took her for a couple of hours, and then we wound up going home. And then it was quite the journey after that. Like I said, I suffered from postpartum depression, and it was really bad. And a lot of people love the newborn stage, and I didn't get to love that part. I honestly haven't felt like I've gotten to really and truly love a whole lot of motherhood because of my postpartum depression. I remember pacing back and forth every single night, all night long. I'm crying, the baby's crying, I'm trying to breastfeed. She's not getting anything out of me. And when I try to give her the formula, which we were using the liquid Similac, it just did not sit right with her, and I was stressed, and it gives me anxiety just thinking about it now. And it was just real bad. And that lasted for a really long time. I think I tried to breastfeed. I told myself I'd do 3 months. And if nothing improved, if it didn't change, I wasn't going to put us both through that. There would be nights where, I'd have her on one boob, and then 2 minutes later, she'd want the other one. Then a minute later, she'd want the other one. And 30 seconds later, she'd want the other one. There was nothing coming out. My ducts were clogged. It was hell. So finally, I said, this is enough. We're going to find a formula that works for her, and that's just the way it's going to be. And that is totally fine. If anyone ever shames you for not breastfeeding, it's not up to them. It's not their kids. It's not their life. Please do not let anyone tell you that that is not okay. They don't know your circumstances, and your circumstances are your business, and it's up to you how you want to raise your kid. There's nothing wrong with formula. I still to this day have people getting mad at me that if they see like a can of formula in the background of a video, they like poop their pants. Anyways, we switched to formula and we found out that the Similac for sensitive stomachs in the powder form was what worked for Ember. And she was on that pretty much until she wasn't on formula anymore. And I struggled for so long with the postpartum depression. I still don't feel like myself to this day. I'm getting better. I am so much better, especially these last few months than I was the first year. It was really, really hard. And I know that they say that the first year of having a kid is like the hardest in every aspect of the form, like your relationships and if you're married, like they say like that's a really trying time is when you have a child, like a newborn, like that first year. And I can definitely say that it was very hard. And we lived in a bus. We lived in a school bus, and while it was great, our circumstances changed and we decided to buy a house. So now we live in a house. Ember's a year and a half and she's really happy and she's thriving. She was a very hard baby. She was constantly like, she had to be with me at all times. She's still kind of like that a little bit, but she's not as bad. And because I'm in a healthier state of mind, it's easier for me to accept that she's like that sometimes and just kind of embrace those moments. And when she falls on the floor because she wants her mom just to hold her, I just let her have that moment and I pick her up and I hold her. And I try not to be irritated or frustrated by it if I'm like in the middle of trying to do something. And I'm just trying to be better at that because these moments are so fleeting and time goes by so fast. I can tell you that feeling like I lost the first year to postpartum depression and not being able to really and truly feel like I got to experience what it's like to be a present mom in a good state of mind. It's really hard for me to think about. And me personally, I just want to make up for that in any way that I can. Ember is the greatest thing that has ever happened to me, and I love her more than I could possibly express in words. And I just want her to have a good childhood. I want her to have a loving childhood. And so dealing with the postpartum depression, I want to be raw and I want to be transparent about it. People don't talk about it enough. And I think that also deserves its own episode too, maybe even more than one, because so many women struggle with postpartum depression and also postpartum anxiety, and no one talks about it. And that's really sad. And so here we are. Ember's almost 20 months years old. Ember's almost 20 months old, and her birthday is in just a few short months. She's going to be 2. I'm going to have a 2-year-old. And I'm feeling like I'm finally coming to terms with the fact that I've even carried a child. My body was a vessel for life. And I'm still in shock about that. It's so wild to me to think about. So that was a quick little overview of my last episode to now. And of course, I'm going to go way deeper than that in the upcoming episodes. I just want to kind of give you guys that little overview so that you can let me know what you want to know. Do you want, an episode about, you know, um, the way that they broke my water, the C-section, the postpartum depression? Like, of course, those are probably things I'm going to cover. So if there's anything that I haven't mentioned that you would like to talk about as a mom, as a grandma, a sister, even as a partner, a dad, a grandpa, whoever may be watching, if you're thinking about becoming a mom and you're scared, or thinking about whether you do or don't want kids, I want to explore everything. And my biggest goal here is to be as raw and transparent as possible, because motherhood is one, it's something I never thought that I would even experience, let alone it being what it is. It's everything. And each and every one of us has a mom. We may not all be moms, but we all have a mom. And that's pretty crazy to think about. It's so simple, but at the same time, it's like, wow, how amazing. I love my mom. My mom gave me the best life that she possibly could, and I admire her and I love her so much. And she's such a strong woman. And growing up, she gave me a life that I couldn't ask for more. I didn't have everything, but I definitely couldn't ask for more. Um, I I I love my mom so much, and to I want to be that, and I want to be that for Ember. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this episode, and anything that you want to discuss, comment it down below and we'll talk about it. I don't care what it is. If you know what the term the third birth is and what that means, if you experienced it, please comment down below. I am dying to know. And if you don't know what it is, you don't need to know what it is. Please don't Google it. But I am just really curious. It's something that I want to discuss in the future. I just really want to hear your thoughts on it if you've dealt with that. Hello, Halo. So thank you so much for watching. I have a guest here that needs some attention, and I will see you guys on the next video.